Hi, welcome to this wrap-up video for round 2. We see the net profits per team. We've went from, say an average of around 40 million to now an average closer to 65 million. We have one team earning an incredible $89 million in net profits, followed by $83 million of net profits. And then team 3, 77 million. And we had 4 teams over the 70 million mark, which is incredible. So net profits continue to skyrocket. Now, points, it's pretty typical to see points pull back a bit in the second round. The first round is easy to make points as you're competing with a prior management team that was terrible. So your year-over-year points, overview points, tend to do pretty well in year 1. In year 2, you're competing against the points you've earned last round, so it gets a little bit more difficult. And we did have the previous team that was blank last round was now occupied by a student, and they were tops, making up a lot of points from the previous round. And remember, you want to score somewhere between 400 and 500 points between rounds. And you see most teams did score between 400 and 500 points, and that's the sweet spot. If you do that every round, you'll easily make the full points for this simulation. If you're scoring below 400 points, then you should really think closely about what you're doing and spend a little bit more effort trying to improve your game on this simulation. Now, if we look at stock price, we have a new number 1 and 2 and 3 position with odd number 1, Vision Inc. number 2, and 90 Auto number 3. So we have 3 new stock price breakouts. Everybody was able to improve their stock price. We have some companies improving them tremendously, going from $9 to $23. So companies have been improving the stock price and improving, for the most part, their profits. If you look at sales per team, our number 1 in sales last round moved to the middle of the pack, and we have a new number 1, which is Deja Autos, followed by J Autos, followed by Team Field. So we do have sort of a new breakout here in round 2 of how our sales are being shuffled. Still in last place, the Ball and Raquel Auto. They need to do a little bit better job looking at their forecasts, reading the student user guide and the forecast projections, and reviewing their individual company charts to see what their demand versus actual is to really improve that sales number. If we look at earnings per share, we have our top 3 earnings per share performers: Odd, Vision Inc., and 90 Auto. And earnings per share does follow in a similar suit as as net profits per team, which in turn is similar, this grouping, in the stock price, because stock price is directly related to earnings per share. You increase your earnings per share, you increase your stock price. And we had this company did tremendously well, as we mentioned before, in rebounding on their earnings per share. This company actually was one of the few companies, or maybe the only company, actually reduced, or 2 companies reduced their earnings per share in this round. So that has to be looked at a little bit more closely. Why your earnings go down? Earnings should not go down when you have an industry that's growing by double-digit percentages. So keep a close eye on your earnings per share and make sure that they don't devalue too much. And now, if we go, let's head on over to my demo. Actually, let's look at the industry charts here. So as far as, not the charts, I don't want the charts, I want the leaderboard here. Okay, so our points range from 700 for the top team all the way down to 263. So if you're below this 400 mark here, all these teams below 400 really need to step up and think about what they're doing, because they're falling behind. And everybody with the 400 above is still on track for an A. Now, everybody still has a possibility for A at this point, but you want to get that over 400 points per round to guarantee it. Now, the profit margins, anything above, I'd say 46% is doing well, and the 67% is just incredible. if you're down here, you started at 40%. So this company actually went backwards, whose investors are hating on them big time because investors never want their gross profit margins to go backwards. And these teams here below 44% and below, their investors are expecting a bit more in gross profit percentage growth. So you want to be more, especially heading into the third round, 50% or higher on your gross profits. Stock prices, we talked about that already. Return on equity looks at profits to equity position in the company, and that's the money that the investors have in the company, their equity position. Total points, some companies, we have a number of teams that are more than halfway to the goal after 2 rounds, and they have 4 more rounds to get to their 2,500. Operating profit margins, really here we're talking about maintaining and managing our operational advertising costs. And here, our earnings per share we talked about. And a good way to juice up earnings per share is to buy back stock, because that reduces your outstanding shares. And that's what companies do in the real world. They're always buying back stock to help their earnings per share and their per share variables. Return on assets, look at how many profits your assets are generating. So if you're loading up on too many unnecessary assets, you're going to reduce this value. Net profit margin is more about maintaining your profits and reducing your interest costs. And we have a revenue per share, of course, is, again, reducing the number of outstanding shares and increasing your revenues will help this. Total asset turnover is how your assets are, looking at sales compared to assets, so sales divided by assets. So here, with a 2, if their sales were 100 million, their assets are 50 million. So again, looking at the efficiency and utilization of your assets. All right, so those are the, so if you look at my demo, I am in my demo, I'm in year 4. So you guys are going into year 3. So let me just, I'm going to reset this practice game. Unfortunately, it always resets to the beginning. So, so with the simulation, you want to make sure that you're improving your profit margins from round to round. And the best way of doing that is, making a car that is going to do that. And you want to make a car that will, as best as possible, meet customer expectations, but still also improve your profits. And that's sort of the balancing game that a lot of companies work in to try to maintain, their profit margins, which is very important to them. So you also want to, you do want to please investors at the same time, but you can't give them everything. You have to sometimes, the profits of your company come first. And that's real business. Although companies would want to tell you otherwise, that their profits don't come first, but that's just misleading. Okay, I just paused the video while I finished round 1, so I didn't want to take up too much of your time. So in round 2, which we went over before, that you want to make sure that you're increasing your profit margins, which I did here, from 40 to 47, and you want to make sure that your forecasts are tight, and you want to make sure you don't have a deficit. If you run a deficit, you lose 100 points, as opposed to making 100 points. So that could be 200-point deduction right there. And you want to always try to put money in your operational investments because you earn points there as well. You should review your assessments. So if you get 2 stars, you did low, and you need to figure out how can I improve that. So the assessment screen here really helps to improve your score. Because I'm getting emails from students saying, I'm not doing well in the simulation. I don't know what to do. And I email them back, have you looked at your assessment? What's that? Oh, okay, well, this is why you're not doing well. You haven't reviewed your assessment. Have you read the student user guide? No, I have no time. I'm working full time. I don't have time to read the student user guide. Okay, well, that's another reason you're not doing well. Have you watched any of the videos I've made for the simulation? No, I haven't. I told you I have no time. I'm working full time. So this game is really a reflection of how much time you can put into it. So if you don't put a lot of time into the simulation, you're not going to get the super results you want. So this is why I make these videos, to help encourage you to put a little bit more effort into the simulation and to at least review your performance chart to see how your forecast, the very bottom is going to lay out your forecast versus actual, market potential versus sales. And, so here, my sales, I'm giving up 261 cars. I'm giving up between the 1,700 and 1,900, 200 cars here, 200 cars here, and 261 cars here that are going to competitors because I didn't forecast properly. And it really, if you use the student user guide, the student user guide practically tells you what to enter in there as an average. So you need to review your industry. What are the profit margins of my competitors? How are they building their cars? What are their results? What are their points? So that's a lot of information that you need to digest and spend some time with the simulation. And that's why, this class is about finance, is about teaching you the importance of how to financially analyze a company, a corporation, a corporate financial statements, financial ratios. In this simulation, you need to really review your financial ratios to understand how to improve them. And part of improving them is really understanding, where your competitors are. Am I meeting my competitors? If I look at the overall industry, am I meeting the industry basics, averages? Am I improving my ratios from last year to this year? So this is really all the stuff you learned in accounting. If you've taken accounting, if you're taking other classes in business, this is putting into practice what you're learning and really trying to apply the concepts that you've learned in many of the courses you've worked in. So when you're completing your round, you have to really kind of understand, well, what is my goal here on my sales page? Well, one goal is to improve, have better gross profit margins. That is a very good goal to have. So you want to try to, even if you have to lower your customer expectations and increase your prices, that's what you'll need to do to improve your profit margins. And customers, you don't always have to beat their expectations or even sometimes meet their expectations to sell your product. There's a lot of terrible products out there that are sold on advertising alone. See the Kia Soul. That's a car where it's pretty much comes at the bottom of a lot of performance review magazines, and they don't really exceed customer expectations, but they have such a great marketing campaign with lasers and hamsters and music that they sell a lot of cars. So it's not solely about, if you're a marketing major, it's not always about the quality of your product. It's really about what type of effectiveness of your marketing that can help really drive a lot of your vehicle. Okay, so I'm done. For round 2, filling out, and all my gross profit margins are better. So that's what I was hoping for. So I'm improving my gross profit margins, and I'm maximizing my shareholders' wealth. And now when it comes to the marketing side, I really have to figure out how much profit am I making per car and how much money can I afford to advertise per car. And luckily they give me a nice expectations range here that does grow every round. These grow, so you have to really pay attention to this to give me an idea of how to fill this in. Now the marketing data does take a while to fill in because you have to use a student manual, so I just kind of can fast forward over here to production, and I see that for this round I only have to buy one production plant, which is going to help my assets, my total asset turnover, my return on assets, so that is good. Now if I forecast, so you have some X over inventory here, so I don't have to quite make, I just want this to be 0. Should never have an excess or a shortage. Because I want to build to my forecast. If I think I'm going to sell 3,300 cars, like for here I might say, you know what, since I have these extra cars, let me go back to sales, and then let me up this forecast to 33, I think that was on the sedan, to 3,300. And this is going to help me meet my capacity utilization a little bit better. So I'm going to forecast these vehicles in, and don't go by my numbers here. Don't copy me because I'm just throwing numbers together really fast. I'm not putting any effort into this. So don't try and copy my numbers and think that's a shortcut, because I'm purposely not maximizing what I'm doing here because I don't want you just to copy what I'm doing. I'm just throwing some numbers in to try to I'm talking about some key hints and points to make, and I always want to make sure I put some operational investments. So even though we're not you don't have to fill in these reflective observations. Probably a good idea to read these and think about them, because they do help you focus on what you're trying to do here. And remember, this simulation, the purpose of the simulation is to help you to better understand what it's like to run a business. Well, you're in business school. Don't you think you want to know sales, marketing, operations, finance, how they work together to make a profit? And if you graduate business school and you don't understand that companies need to maximize their shareholders' wealth, this is a game where that's what you're trying to do. Okay, so I have a nice surplus here. So in this round, I can afford to retire some of the debt that I had accumulated in previous rounds and buy back some stock. All right. Okay, so now I still have a decent surplus. I like to keep over 10 million, at least 20 million in my surplus, so I don't have a surprise deficit. How do you get a surprise deficit? When I don't sell all the cars I forecasted, I'm left with the inventory. So if I'm left with the inventory, I didn't sell those cars, I didn't make the profit I expected on those cars, so I'm going to have additional assets to hold on to, which is going to hurt my per asset ratios, and it's also going to reduce the profits I'm making, which could lead me into a deficit. So that's why I want to be careful with that. Okay. So now, finishing up round 2, I'm in round 3, just like you guys are in round 3. So what you should do before you start round 3 is look at your balanced scorecard here, basically, your overview points. And I was able to increase my profit margins in all 3 areas, which got me a nice set of points here. I got points because I reduced my debt ratios, I improved my sales, I was able to increase my equity, my earnings per share, my assets, improve my forecast, except for economy wasn't as good. And I had a surplus, I had operational investments, so I made 700 points for round 2 going to round 3, which is really good. So now the tough part is I have to try to beat my new profit margins. So, and at the same point, competing with all the other computer players in this practice round to beat them as well. Okay, so I hope you found this video helpful and just trying to go over the basics of the simulation, review how your performance is per team, and give you some ideas of how I would fill in the simulation or things I would look for. And it's very important to read over these assessments and get an idea. And right here under revenue, my revenues are disappointing. They're kind of average. So, then I would want to look at, well, why are my revenues average? I guess I under forecasted. And right here, when I look at my market potential versus sales, it's going to show me that, yeah, I under forecasted on 2 key areas, truck and luxury. So that hurt my overall forecast numbers. So, there's a lot to this game and a lot you should be doing to review your work and think about what you're doing. And if you haven't watched the videos, you haven't read the student user guide, you haven't played a number of practice rounds, you're not fully prepared to do the best in this simulation. So, okay, so for week 1, I review rounds 1 and 2 of the simulation to get you a nice foundation. For week 2 of this class, I'm going to review after you've completed rounds 3 and 4. And remember, rounds 3 and 4, if I look at our, go into Blackboard, I'm going to look at when are these rounds coming up. Okay, so here is our Blackboard for the class. And I see we have a round due on, we did Tuesday and Thursday last week. So Tuesday, January 9th and Thursday, January 11th. We have rounds 3 and 4 due. So complete those rounds. And then on a Friday or Saturday, I will make a recap video for those 2 rounds to review that with you. And remember to keep up with the homework manager and the spreadsheet assignments for the class, and as well as the readings and the lectures. Okay, thank you for your time and continue to be excellent.